Like every one of you, here at Children's Cancer Institute, we believe that a life should be long, that every child should have a chance to grow up, grow old, chase their dreams, and fulfill their potential. But cancer cuts short life for hundreds of children every year. Our research is focused on finding better, safer treatments for children with cancer, so every one of them has a chance to live a long and healthy life. Your belief in our work has allowed us to make significant progress over the past 12 months. A landmark moment in the treatment of childhood cancer was reached when the Zero Childhood Cancer Program, which we run in partnership with the Kids Cancer Centre at Sydney Children's Hospital Randwick, became available to all children with cancer in Australia. This is the first time that precision medicine has been made available to every child diagnosed with cancer, not just in Australia, but in any country in the world. We simply could not have achieved this extraordinary milestone without your support. With over 1,500 children now enrolled on Zero, we are refining and improving our ability to deliver actionable recommendations for clinicians. This past year, we have published research showing that adding high-throughput drug screening to genomic analysis for children enrolled on Zero can provide important insights into their cancers and how best to treat them. Our quest for new treatments for children with cancer that are not only more effective but less toxic has led to important developments this last year. Amongst these was a world-first discovery that many more children with cancer than previously realised could be candidates for immunotherapy. This research could lead to the way to safer therapeutic options for many children in the future. We were also able to achieve a breakthrough in the use of nanotechnology to deliver treatment drugs directly to cancer cells. Through this targeted approach, the aim is to make treatment more effective as well as much safer to use in children. This year, the Institute launched its new research structure designed to provide our researchers with a place to grow and do great science that makes a difference. 2 new deputy directors were appointed, Associate Professors Paul Eckert and Mark Cowley. 94 research papers were published throughout 2023, and we were able to attract over $37 million in grant funding for research projects at the Institute. A wonderful endorsement of the world-class science being conducted here. Lastly, the Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre, our new home from the end of next year, 2025, is getting closer, with major works progressing really quickly. With the recent topping out of the building, our long-held dream of working under one roof in a fully integrated way with our clinical colleagues at the Kids Cancer Centre is coming to fruition, and we could not be more excited. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey and for believing, as we do, that a life should be long. I hope you feel so proud of your contribution, because this progress simply would not have happened without you. Through your support, you are helping to ensure that every child will have the opportunity to grow up, grow old, and live their life to the fullest. Together, we can and we will one day cure all children of cancer. It's not if, it's when. Good evening, everyone, and it's fantastic to see so many of you here tonight. Fellow directors, distinguished guests, staff, supporters, friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you all for being here for tonight's research showcase. Before we begin, and on behalf of all present today, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal and the Bidjigal people as the traditional custodians of the unceded land that we work on at the Institute. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and recognise their cultural and spiritual relationships with the land, water and sea. It is our privilege to learn from their rich contributions to society and science as we work together towards finding a cure for all children with cancer. So we're here tonight to reflect on and celebrate our successes, the highlights of which you've just seen, some of, and there's another video coming now, which for your support was so critical in helping us to achieve. The importance of your support actually can't be overstated. It is so critical to our ability to conduct world-class science and to the continuing impact that we are able to have on children with cancer and their families, so many of whom are here with us tonight. We also look to the future with great excitement as we take you through the journey to our new home, the Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre, a state-of-the-art environment with the capacity to house more than 900 dedicated cancer researchers, scientists, clinicians, allied healthcare workers, working side by side for the first time with the single goal of improving outcomes for children with cancer. I was just talking to Jack Cassis earlier this evening, actually, who was the founding father of Children's Cancer Institute, and we talked about building the first building, which was going to accommodate 15 scientists focusing on children's cancer research. That was mind-blowing at the time. The fact that we're now 350, the Kids Cancer Centre, over 200, when we move in, we'll be over 550, and there will be the room to recruit the brightest and best in the world. I would like to extend tonight a special welcome. I hope they're here, Bruce and Marianne Mansfield. Bruce, are you here? I can't see you. I know you're meant to be coming from Minderoo, and also the team from Tour de Cure, to thank you for your extraordinary support of this groundbreaking initiative. At Children's Cancer Institute, and you may have heard me say this a number of times, we believe that a life should be long, that every child deserves a chance to grow up and grow old. And it is quite shocking to think that today, more children still die from cancer in this country than from any other disease. In fact, about 3 children per week. This year marks 40 years since our first labs opened. And I'm proud to say that we really have made some truly significant progress in that time. But there is so much more to do. More than 1,000 Australians under the age of 20 are diagnosed with cancer every year, which equates to about 20 families hearing this news every week. And depending largely on their diagnosis, too many of these young Australians will face the distinct possibility of dying from their disease. Because for all the progress we and others around the world have made over the years, some of these cancers in children still have abysmal cure rates. In fact, some are still uniformly fatal. And the fact remains that those who survive are more than likely to face, in some cases, very serious long-term effects as the result of the actual treatments used to save their lives. These major issues, low survival for some types of cancers, high rates of health problems in survivors, drive what we do at the Institute. Our motivation is to see children diagnosed with cancer not just surviving, but going on to live long, healthy lives. And we want to know that our research is making a difference for these children and their families. We want to have a real, tangible impact. And although we focus on the entire spectrum from basic biology through to clinical translation, it's the science that is not only early discovery research, but research that can be translated to the clinic where it can directly benefit kids with cancer. So to ensure that our research is truly translational, we work closely with our clinical colleagues at the Kids Cancer Centre at Sydney Children's Hospital, Randwick. And in fact, we've been doing that for the last 40 years since we first started. So at this point, I'd just like to welcome, not up to the stage yet, but to welcome here my very close colleague, Dr. Richard Mitchell, who is Director of the Kids Cancer Centre, who you'll hear from shortly. Our research at Children's Cancer Institute is informed by what happens in the clinic. And what happens in the clinic is informed by our research. And we know from our experience and from experience around the world that it's this collaborative and iterative approach that leads to the best outcomes for kids with cancer. Perhaps the clearest example of this is the Zero Childhood Cancer Program, which you've heard a little about, but I'll just speak to in a little more detail now, which is an absolutely joint initiative between Children's Cancer Institute and the Kids Cancer Centre. Zero came about as a result of the recognition that every child's cancer is unique, and therefore we need to tailor treatments to individuals, not just a one-size-fits-all approach. This personalised approach, which doctors and scientists now more commonly call precision medicine, centres on using highly sophisticated genetic analysis to inform each child's treatment. In practice, this means analysing samples from every child's tumour in our laboratories to understand what is driving their cancer at a molecular genetic level, and then using those results to provide that child's oncologist with a personalised treatment recommendation, where the recommended drugs are matched to the specific genetic changes that we found are driving that child's cancer's aggressive growth. So that's exactly what we're doing with Zero, and a little later you're going to be hearing from two of our team, Paulette Barahona and Dr. Loretta Lau, of just how this collaboration between research and the clinic happens in real time. And just for those of you who aren't familiar with Zero, it involves all 9 of Australia's children's hospitals, as well as more than 20 national and international research partners. And it's been operating at a national level since 2017. Originally, Zero was only open to children with the highest risk cancers, those with less than 30% chance of survival. And even in this cohort of patients who were pretty much destined to die, we have achieved through Zero some remarkable results. Just recently, the results from nearly 400 children with high-risk cancer enrolled on Zero have become available, and those results, we're very proud, are going to be published very shortly in one of the top 3 medical journals in the world. Excitingly, these results show that the 2-year survival rates of children who received their personalised recommended treatments through Zero, those survival rates are significantly higher than those of children who were treated with standard treatments or treatments that were not guided by Zero. Put simply, there's a growing cohort of children who are alive today who would have died without Zero. And at the end of last year, as you heard me say, Zero expanded to become available to all Australians, all young Australians diagnosed with cancer, not just those with the high-risk cancer anymore. And this is the first time in any country in the world that every child diagnosed with cancer will have access to precision medicine. So we and you should all be extremely proud of that achievement. We will now be doing genomic analysis on several hundred children's cancer samples each year. They all come to Children's Cancer Institute, no matter where in the country these children are diagnosed. And aside from potentially benefiting those children individually who are enrolled on Zero, the analysis of this massive data that we're collecting will generate vast amounts of information about childhood cancer, which we will be sharing with scientists and clinicians all around the world. So the impact of Zero will not just be limited to the here and now, but will ultimately benefit all children with cancer in the future. Now, it's this success of Zero that has paved the way, lit the beacon for what we can do when we work in partnership to this new and very exciting opportunity, Australia's first Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre. And to share more about what this will mean, I'm now delighted to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Richard Mitchell.
Thank you, Michelle. Can I light this up because I'm not going to stand still? Thank you. I am an event manager's worst nightmare. They said, "You're standing at the podium." I said, "I'm absolutely not." Thank you very much to Michelle and to Simon as well for this fabulous invitation, for this opportunity to see you all tonight and to share our vision. Why are we all here? Because we haven't got it right. Michelle outlined the problem. Children are still dying from cancer, and those that are surviving have a terrible journey that can leave them with permanent physical, psychological side effects. We need to do better. That is what the Comprehensive Cancer Centre is about. The Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre is the first of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere. Modelled on places like St Jude's Children's Hospital, Boston's Children's Hospital, Princess Maxima in Europe, are coming together, as Michelle has said, of the researchers and scientists at the Children's Cancer Institute and the clinicians and researchers at the Kids Cancer Centre. When we start, somewhere north of 550, with plan for more than 900. 900 people with a dedicated goal of improving the journey and saving children with cancer. The government has an Australian cancer plan released. Part of that cancer plan is a comprehensive cancer network. This centre is the only paediatric centre as part of that comprehensive network. It will not only be the only kind of in Australia, as far as we're aware, it will be the only type of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere. It will be a beacon of training, a beacon of research, a beacon of hope, because we haven't got it right. But the focus of that centre, the focus of everything we do, is the patient and the family. And everything we do rolls around that. When we're focusing on discovery science, translational science, implementation. When we're thinking about prevention, through to active treatment, through to survivorship, through to even things about impacts on the wider family group. Everything comes around with the patient at the centre. Sounds good, doesn't it? But what does it mean? You know, Michelle already said we're already doing what we do, and in fact we are doing that already. Zero does that already. Many of the people in this room have supported that vitally important program. And if Zero had not happened, then we would have no Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre. Let us be clear. So that vitally important work needs to continue, and it will continue. But what else does it bring? What it brings a reason. It brings a reason for us to challenge ourselves, to say everything we do, can we do it better in every aspect? It also brings opportunity. At the moment, we have a grant that we've been able to submit that looks at using a new type of MRI technology. No one's called it this, but a baby MRI for use in kids under 25 kilos. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever had to have an MRI in their lives before, but it's a hugely enormous machine, very loud, very confronting if you're an adult, let alone if you're a 7-year-old child. When that kid is having that MRI, they have to be asleep. That is a huge logistical challenge. You have an anaesthetist attached to a whole room, there's cables going, there's all sorts of stuff. It can take 4 to 5 hours even just for a single scan. We are talking about doing translational research with this new baby MRI, which will literally fit on this part of the stage, with an anaesthetist right here, and more importantly, a parent right here. There is nothing like this happening in the Southern Hemisphere. The only reason we are able to put in that grant, the only reason we potentially have the space to do something like this, is because we're getting a comprehensive cancer centre. That is one opportunity. Another opportunity is things that we're already doing. There are people in this room supporting cutting-edge research, because one of the key things that we need to make sure about that journey is that we need treatments, we need new cutting-edge treatments, but we need them here. At the moment, we have a trial open that looks at using CAR T cells in DIPG, the most serious, fatal type of brain tumour they had, the worst cancer that we have. That trial has been made possible only by philanthropy. That trial offers treatments to families who otherwise would pick up and go overseas. Moving forward, that has to be our goal. Cutting-edge therapies so that families don't feel they can pick up and have to go. We have to support our families, we have to support them, and we have to support them locally. That can be leveraged through a comprehensive centre. We can take all discovery, not only of Michelle's group, but anybody that wants to play with us, because we will have the ability to take that amazing idea and translate it and innovate it. We've had discussions with government at the highest levels, and they come to us and said, we're very enthusiastic, said Sylvester, very enthusiastic about this, and this will be a national resource. And Michelle and I say, yes, Minister. This allows us to open up equity of access across the country. How does that work? In two different ways. For that trial that we mentioned, we're having people come from all over the country, because some therapies you've got to do in-house. So we've treated literally kids from every state in this country so far trying to get this therapy. But we can do it in other ways too. We can say, okay, we have this trial, we have this idea, so we're going to take that idea and we're going to make it and we're going to run this trial through our comprehensive centre, but we're going to reach out in partnership, in collaboration, just like we do with Zero. If you're in Perth, let's talk to Perth and say, we have this trial, let us help you open that trial. Let us help you deliver therapies to kids that need it in close to home. And we can do that too. So the building is an excuse, but it is a prime reason. Care, research, education, support. Support for the community. These are the principles of a comprehensive cancer centre. These are the principles that will drive the MCCCC. Now, in most settings, you're talking about that in maybe a kind of local health district level. For the MCCCC, those principles, care, research, education, and support, are national. National partnerships in care, national partnerships in research, national partnerships in education, national support. So your support for where we are and where we are going does not just help the kids in Coogee or Cootamundra or Cowra. The support you help in these four walls, well, what will be the four walls, in what we're doing in this precinct, the benefits of that will be felt not only in this country, but it will be felt internationally. We lead groundbreaking research in Zero, and there's a hell of a lot more to come. I thank you very much for your time. We're going to show you a little video about what the MCCCC is all about. Thank you very much.
There's about 1,000 children and young people diagnosed with cancer in Australia every year. 60 years ago, childhood cancer was a death sentence. Today we have 85% of children surviving, but that means that 3 children every week are still dying of cancer. Even for the other children who survive their disease, the journey isn't over. Many of those children are left with lifelong side effects of the treatments that are used to cure their cancer.
The Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre is a groundbreaking initiative that will bring together the Kids Cancer Centre of Sydney Children's Hospital, the Children's Cancer Institute, as well as support from the University of New South Wales.
There will be the clinicians and the scientists in one space with a single common goal of curing children with cancer and giving them a better quality of life.
It will be the first of its kind, and it will be a game changer in the way that we treat children with cancer in Australia.
Working side by side with clinicians will allow our researchers to really understand the main clinical problems that worry our clinicians, the challenges that their patients have to overcome and that the families go through during the care of their treatment.
We can talk about the challenges they have in the clinic, we can talk about what we're discovering in the laboratory, and we can get feedback in real time about what we're doing and adapt our treatments and what we're developing.
When we're connected to those clinicians that have those real world needs, that have those patients, lives depending on what we do, we can get a really quick reality check and say, this is absolutely critical and it will impact children.
The infrastructure is world class. We are bleeding edge, not only in the research that we're doing, but also in the technical capacity of the people who are supporting our activity and also in the infrastructure that they're working with.
We would have many more laboratory groups within the MCCCC focused on the biology, the fundamental nature of childhood cancers.
We've actually got purpose-built laboratories. One aspect's got an area where we can actually bioprint.
The MCCCC will allow us to not only expand our program, but to do it in a way that will guarantee us that we can run the development programs and the clinical facing programs at the same time.
We'll have remarkable access to health data, informing research and back and forth, this wonderful continuum so that we can do bench to bedside research and back again.
There would be a host of training opportunities for new staff, for visitors, also education programs for our staff and for our students.
It's going to be national in focus so that the innovations being developed at the centre have a network effect and are improving care around Australia and indeed the region.
It's a centre where every family and child can in their own way contribute to research not only in their child's cancer and improve those outcomes, but for the next children after them and for the generations downward.
It's about more than what we're doing now. It's taking us to that next level. It's about thinking the whole spectrum of care for children's cancer, but it's about the research that goes along with it to make those outcomes better.
I have no doubt that as we continue to work together more effectively, we will gradually get to the point that one day we cure every child with cancer. And I absolutely believe that the Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre is going to be a key part of delivering on that vision.
Thank you everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening and Lorraine and I will be presenting an overview of the Zero program, but also a real life illustration of the program as well. So this slide is probably a little small, but it's an overview of the Zero program and how it's improving precision medicine in children with cancer. So if I take you through the journey of a child will get sick and present at a hospital. And at the hospital, they'll be diagnosed with the cancer. So while they're at the hospital, they'll get a medical procedure and obtain a sample of their tumour. And that tumour will end up at the Children's Cancer Institute. So once it arrives at the Children's Cancer Institute, we then perform an in-depth genomic analysis. So while that's ongoing, the patient continues with standard of care. So once the data comes back, we then present the findings to a multidisciplinary tumour board. And basically what that means is you've got roughly around 80 professionals dialing in across Australia. And this is where we discuss and review the findings for each of the cases, so each of the children that are going through our program. And effectively what we do there is also share those findings with the treating doctor as well. And with the hope that it'll alter potential treatment for that child. If the patient has enough material, we then perform preclinical studies. And effectively what we do is drug screening on the actual patient samples in the laboratory, but also we have them in mouse models as well. So that also gives another indication as to how the cancer's behaving and potential drugs that could be used for the patient. So again, we repeat the process and we bring that to the multidisciplinary tumour board. Again, the results are reviewed, discussed, and then shared with the treating oncologists, and with the potential of refining treatment for that child. So the next couple of slides, I'll take you through the patient journey, the patient sample journey. So basically, we get a blood sample and a tumour sample from the patient. We then isolate what's called DNA and RNA, and then we perform sequencing. So effectively, we do this in-depth genomic analysis. And what that means is we can perform whole genome sequencing, RNA sequencing, methylation analysis. And really what that means is that we're using state-of-the-art technology to have insight into the patient's tumour. So then once we have the data, this data is also reviewed through another group, which is the omics curation team. And the omics curation team consists of cancer and germline experts. And this includes bioinformatic specialists, computational biologists, curators, molecular geneticists, oncologists, clinical fellows, you name it. So in this meeting we have every Friday, and we typically have around 30 to 40 people dialing into this meeting, where we discuss on average around 8 patients in 2 hours. We come to a consensus on what's of clinical importance, and we bring that forward to the multidisciplinary tumour board. Again, that meeting is weekly, and on average we have around 80 professionals dialing in to those meetings weekly. So again, from that meeting we come to consensus of what's actually going to be on the patient report, and that report goes back to the treating doctor and ultimately for the patient. And on the right-hand side, you can see just a map, and it's basically what Michelle was saying. We collaborate with all 9 paediatric oncology units here in Australia, but we're also tapping into our international medical research institutes as well. So this is over in Europe, the US and Canada. I'll pass on to Loretta.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So this is the journey of one of our patients who was enrolled on Xero. So Baby Hannah is actually a made-up name because of patient confidentiality, but I love to have a name put to it because it's more personal. This way? Okay. So this baby actually was bothered by seizures all her life, even at the newborn period. So at 4 weeks of age, she had more seizures, and then an MRI was done. So as Richard had mentioned to you just now, a small baby with MRI need a special machine. So an MRI was done, and it found a really large cystic cavity in her brain. So you can see on this MRI picture there, I don't think you need a radiologist in the audience to say something is not right, because one side of the brain looks like normal brain, the other one just had this big ring in there, which is a big cyst. And that white line surrounding that big hole or cyst is actually possibly lined by tumour. So this baby actually had her first brain surgery at 4 weeks of age. Imagine a tiny baby having brain surgery at 4 weeks of age. The tumour came out, and then our pathologists look at it under the microscope. So the pink and purple dots over there are actually representing what a pathologist will actually see under a microscope. And unfortunately, the result came back is that we're now dealing with an infant malignant brain tumour, essentially from a baby who was actually born with a malignant brain tumour. So at that point, she was actually started with chemotherapy at 2 months of age, and then by 4 months of age, she actually went back for a second round of brain surgery. Now, and then afterwards, she actually continued on chemotherapy for her malignant brain tumor, an aggressive brain tumor, from the age of 2 to 9 months. Imagine, she essentially spent the first 9 months of her life, having surgery and getting chemotherapy for a brain tumor. Despite all that, she's still left with residual brain tumor, which was just slowly growing all the time, and it probably would have grown even faster without chemotherapy. So then, what's the treatment options for baby Hannah then? Now we've tried chemotherapy for now 7 months. Are there any other options? So thankfully, her tumor from the first surgery was actually analyzed by Zero. So we, as Paulette has said, we sequenced the tumor, and we actually discovered what we call a gene fusion. So it's kind of like a mutation, but 2 genes basically got separated or got smashed apart and then get put together. Anyway, what it really means is that there's actually potential drugs that's available to so-called target that particular gene fusion. And as Paulette has just described, we actually, if we have the opportunity, we would actually put the tumor cells through what we call a high throughput drug screening process. And the picture here just shows one of our fascinating machines that allows us to do this type of drug screening procedure, where the tumor cells are essentially treated with over 150 different drugs, and they're all like put on little wells in the plastic dish, and then you just add 1 drug to each of those wells. I think you need to see it in operation to figure out how fascinating this is. Now, there are 150 drugs, and actually within those 150 drugs, there are 6 drugs that potentially can be effective or can target this particular gene fusion that we find in this baby's brain tumor. And we were very pleased to find out that the tumor cells was actually, out of the 6 drugs, most sensitive to 1 of that drug. And so what happens is that, as I said, this baby has gone 7 months of chemotherapy, which is not really effective. So then the next step, actually what happened to this baby is that she was actually started on this targeted drug, through enrollment in a clinical trial, which was made available to her. So unlike chemotherapy, which is given intravenously or through a drip or a central line, this is actually an oral drug just given twice a day. It even comes in an oral suspension. So a little baby can't swallow tablets, right? So the drug company actually made a liquid out of that. And then she did an MRI after 4 months, or 3 months. And, surprisingly, or we were very pleased about it, is that she actually responded after just 3 months of that targeted therapy. And she's currently 6 months into that treatment. So then people ask, well, this is just one of the so many children. How about if you put everyone together? What does that really mean, So I have to say more than 1 child has actually, benefit from Zero. So as Michelle has actually described what is going to be reported in the very near future in one of the top medical journals, is that, high-risk children analyzed by the Zero Precision Medicine study and then get what we describe now as precision-guided treatment, over half of them will actually benefit from that treatment. And this is actually a very substantial proportion of children who would actually benefit from Zero and getting precision medicine type of treatment.
So I guess what Richard said, how do we do this better? And so we're hoping that the MQuadC is the place to allow this collaborative partnership to bring together the clinicians, the clinical staff, researchers, academics into this new and integrated facility. It'll help facilitate combining research and clinical care and support training and education opportunity for researchers, clinicians, and to the wider community. It's also going to allow the seamless integration of doctor and scientists to improve the use of patient data from the lab bench to bedside more efficiently. So in the aim, it's basically to improve health outcome for children. This is just an acknowledgement slide of all the group that basically touch at every point each child that comes through our program. And also our Zero supporters. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulette. Can you hear me? There we go. Thank you, Paulette and Loretta, for the outstanding presentation. It really is extraordinary to see the way that research and clinical care are working together with the single goal of improving the outcome of every individual child. And now, to see that Zero is available to every child in Australia diagnosed with cancer. I'm sure we'll only see that impact grow. So congratulations to the entire Zero team for making this happen. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Simon Truscott and I have the privilege of being the chair of the Children's Cancer Institute. And it's now my pleasure to facilitate tonight's Q&A session. So we now have on stage, they've preempted this, thank you, very slick operation, Professor Michelle Haber on the far right. Next to her, of course, is Dr. Richard Mitchell, who you've heard from earlier, Dr. Loretta Lau, who we've just heard from, as well as for the first time tonight, Associate Professor Paul Eckert, who's the Deputy Director of Research Themes at Children's Cancer Institute. So welcome to the stage, everyone. So through this Q&A process, what we'd like to do is examine this research and clinical partnership in more detail and look towards how the Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre will help us enhance this. In a moment, I'll throw out to all of you in the audience to ask your insightful questions, so put your thinking minds together. But first, a question from me for all the panel. I'd like to ask what excites you most about the prospect of the MQuad-C? Who'd like to jump in first?
Go. I'll start. So, as I said, we've worked together for 40 years with the clinicians at the Kids Cancer Centre. But to do that, it's been hard work. You mightn't think it is, but clinicians have day jobs being doctors and scientists have day jobs being scientists. And if we've wanted to think about creating programs like Zero or any of the other partnerships that we've had with the doctors, to do that, we have to make an appointment. We have to walk up the road or they have to walk down the road. If our scientists are doing research on clinical samples, they have to walk up the road, they have to go with a canister, it doesn't matter whether it's raining, canister in one hand, umbrella in the other, pick up the samples. Honestly, I'm trying to paint the picture for you, but that's exactly what happens. And they then walk down the road and they bring it back to our labs. They're two separate worlds. Our joint vision and commitment to partnering together to save the lives of kids and make their journeys better has meant that for this 40 years, those clinicians have made the time and our scientists have made the time. But everything we've achieved has been in spite of that tyranny of distance. What this will do, for me, this is the thing that's so exciting, is that we will have my desk next to Richard's desk. We will have a single common tea room. We have the clinicians, the scientists, everyone working together in the one space. The single tea room is critical because there will be nowhere else in that beautiful 20,000 square metre building that we've designed. Everything about the design of that has been to drive integration. So there will be no other space for, unless you want to sit in a lonely corner somewhere because you're really antisocial. If you want to have lunch or a cup of coffee, you will go to this common tea room with that water cooler effect. And the way that we've designed it is that they're large floor plates so that it's only one level or at the max 2 stair levels from anywhere in that building to that central area. So you can pop down. You don't even have to get into a lift. You can meet people on the stairs. Everything is designed to drive those conversations that will drive innovation. And to me, it's just so exciting that we will be brought together in a way that will allow us to exponentially drive the speed at which we can bring innovations to these kids.
And we're not, it is a tea room, but perhaps appropriately symbolically we're calling it the heart, because it will be the heart. And I think that is very much an exciting part. I would agree with everything Michelle has said. That's how we roll. But I would actually challenge the paradigm a bit here. Why am I excited? Because nobody's ever done anything like this before in this country. It's a little bit what I was banging on about before. We have the opportunity to rewrite the landscape. You know, we can say we want to do this. Why? Because we're the Comprehensive Cancer Centre and this needs to change. If we're really going to do this properly, if we're really going to enact proper change, because we've been banging away at this for 40 years and doing a superb job and pushing the boundaries and making sure that we're making change. But if we really want to change the landscape, we have to push ourselves. And so that is an opportunity here. We have everybody aligned internally and externally to do something really amazing, something that this has not been seen before. And I think that's the really exciting thing for me.
It is exciting. And Loretta?
Yeah, I'm going to be the practical person here. So today I actually made 3 trips from the hospital to the research institute, and I think it cost me about 45 minutes backwards and forwards to make these 3 trips, and including stopping at the traffic light and jaywalking as well. So if we are all in the same building, then I would have probably saved 45 minutes today.
Yeah. And what about you, Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to talk maybe about a motivation that hasn't been mentioned yet, but I think is really important, and from the scientist's perspective. We're all there to do our best, really, for children with cancer, but there's also a sense of excitement and potentially a thrill in the discovery when we get the opportunity to unpick that Gordian knot of an individual's cancer or find something. And the ability not only to share that with colleagues in that environment, to perhaps infect them with a little bit of our enthusiasm and excitement that comes from the bench, but also to know that that has a pathway forward. It just doesn't stop at the door into the lab. It finds its way out into the world in a manner that's very different to the way it happens now. It's published in a scientific paper, it takes years, but now we can share these discoveries with our clinical colleagues and with our friends and the people in that Comprehensive Cancer Centre the day it happens. And I'm just so excited to see what impact that makes. Like Richard, this is something different, it's something new, and I really want to do the experiment.
Yeah, yeah. Housekeeping, there are microphones on both sides of the aisle. Over to you, audience. I'm sure you've got lots of questions you'd like to ask. If you do have a question, just raise your hand. I'll do the same just to block the light so I can see. And just perhaps quickly introduce yourself.
Hi,
and
can you hear me?
The questions. We can.
I'm interested, given the capacity, is the capacity so great that how do you determine bed allocation?
Could you just repeat that?
How do you determine who has access to the facility? How do you work out who can get in? Or is the capacity so great that every child with cancer in Australia can gain access to this remarkable...
Oh, yeah. So that's not a thing. So first off, anybody that requires treatment, no matter where they come from, already gets treatment. So I'll keep this short, but let me take the premise of the question. So what is my catchment? What is our catchment, right? Like, who do we look after? At this point, at the moment, of the people that walk through the door, of the children and families that walk through the door, 60% of them come from outside of Sydney. That's just our cohort. Moving forward, there's going to be more of those children outside of this state. There are only 9 paediatric centres in this country that treat children with cancer. We all know each other. So whoever needs it, I guess, is the short answer. There is no limitation from that point of view. Yes, there's capacity, but that's not our consideration, and it would never be a limitation. And because of the benefits of our health system, to be honest, we just make it work. So everyone is the answer to that question.
That's good news. Others? Yes.
Hi, I'm Jo, and I was just interested to hear your vision. I loved the description of the heart. I'm wondering, from the young child's perspective, what your vision is, and for the family as well. We've got this beautiful vision of the clinician, the researcher. I'm thinking of a child that would walk past and we'd go, oh, that's where the researchers might be. I'm just curious to hear your vision of that.
So for a huge amount, and I'll let Richard talk about the details, but a huge amount of the design, which extraordinarily we were reflecting with the architects just last week, that we built this on Zoom basically through COVID. The funding was announced in 2019, March 2019, and the tender for the architect and the building was all towards the end of that year. So this whole planning took place through COVID. And one of the key things was about the journey of the child and what that would be like. What we've done with this building in terms of the design, for example, as you walk into this new building, a hospital, one of the first things you'll see on the ground floor is a public discovery laboratory. So what we're wanting to do is to bring to the families and the parents the vision of that hope. So it's not just a word, but they will actually be able to see scientists working at the lab bench as they walk in. Richard will tell you more about the design of the labs, but this is, so the other thing I want to say is one of the shining beacons of cancer research and clinical care in Australia is the Victorian Comprehensive Cancer Centre, which is where we got our inspiration from to do this. That's in the adult space, the first comprehensive cancer centre for adults. It was piggybacked off the back of that, literally in the grounds of the VCCC with the then Health Minister, Greg Hunt, where we said, imagine if we could do this for the kids as well. And in speaking to the people at the VCCC who similarly have their labs and their clinics in the same building, they told me the one mistake that they made, which was that although they're in the one building, they have two lifts. And when you come in, you're either a doctor or a patient that goes that way, or a researcher and a scientist that goes that way. So although it's in the one building, the design has actually not driven that alignment. So in our building, it'll be that in the lifts as you go in, there will be children on drips, there will be scientists, there will be people with stethoscopes around their necks. So that whole vision of integration and alignment and one team working together will be there front and centre for every patient and every family that comes in, as well for our scientists to be inspired by what they're doing and to inspire the clinical staff and the hospital staff about what the researchers are doing. So the whole physical building is that same. From wherever you sit, you can see that integration and that alignment and all working together. I'll pass on to Richard.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent summary. An example is level 5 of the building. You get into these lifts. I mean, hopefully those people with stethoscopes don't get in the road. I don't know who they are, but anyway. You go into level 5 of the building, you walk out of the lifts, you go right, you're getting outpatient treatment as a child, you go left, you go into our wet lab. Right, so it's literally all as a together. The other point I think you're making, and I think that's the other focus that we really had, is about the family journey and about the patient the patient heart. Because one of the challenges that we have is that families are stuck in hospital for a long time, and getting access to an extended family. We took a lot of consumer input into our patient or our clinical space design, a lot of input. And other than telling us they all wanted their own single room, which we heard loud and clear, we have very extensive, I guess what I call extended family spaces. We have a beautiful family designed kitchen, which is literally designed so that on the weekend when the extended family come in, they can all sit down and have Sunday dinner together. You know, different kind of spaces, because to be honest, for a while, this becomes their home. And we need to accommodate for that. And that comes back to making that journey better. And so there's a lot of considerations around all of that, as well as what Michelle has outlined in terms of the public laboratories, the communal space, the way we are coming in and out of the building. So I think as best we can, for many respects, I think there is going to be really true integration, which carries different things. We've had discussions internally, for example, very confronting for the CCI staff to be in that clinical space, but we're ready to tackle those things, and I think it will help, take people to the next level in terms of, what they want to do.
Michelle and Richard, are you guys ready to share an office?
To be honest, Paul, I was thinking we're never there at the same time.
My question, a little more seriously, is, and I think you've been talking about this, but I think I know it's top of mind. How do you think about, like, your shared passion, the passion of the four of you for integrated and comprehensive care is very evident. How do you make sure that everyone buys into that? And if this is a new way of treatment, how do you ensure that they adopt this as fully as they can? And there's clearly physical things you're doing in the hospital to make it happen, but what else are you doing to make that happen?
Sorry? Speak to the zero thing first. Sure. So I don't want to do all the talking, but I'd like Loretta to actually speak to our experience with that, with even the zero thing, right? Because that's already a thing. Do you want to speak to that for a second?
So can you repeat the question? I didn't quite get it, sorry.
Could you just repeat the question in terms of how effectively how are you slowly going to make a difference in working?
Would you like me to speak without an accent? How are the scientists and the researchers and the clinicians on the other side, how are they going to adopt this new way of working together?
Okay, got you. So I can give you a very good example. So we had a very successful Zero Symposium last week, and we have international people coming from Toronto, Canada, and the Netherlands, from very big pediatric oncology center. And they got invited to join us in our curation meeting, and they got invited to join us in the molecular tumor board, and they were most impressed because we actually have everyone together in not really a physical room, but a virtual room where, so me as a clinician, I have a colleague of mine who's actually based in Melbourne, and we do very similar things with Zero. And I also have my, what we call clinical fellows, who I'm actually currently training in precision medicine, to be in that same group again. And then I have Paulette's team, who are essentially the curation scientists looking at the molecular data. And then I also had, the bioinformatician who actually helps us deal with the massive data, all in the same room, talking about a real patient. And that's the most important thing, because we all learn from each other. And so what are the international people most impressed about is that we can all work together in that same room to discuss a patient. I said, oh, don't you do the same thing? They said, well, not really, because what happened to them is that their scientists work together and look at the genomics data, and then they issue a report to the clinician to look at, and then talk about the report to the family. So they don't really have this connection that we have. So in my mind is that being in the same building, be it like a physical and a virtual room, I think makes a huge difference to what we do for children with cancer.
Richard or Paul, do you want to add to that?
I would just like to add to that, and it's building perhaps on what you said, something that you said earlier, Richard, in your spiel, which was that without Zero there would not be an MQuad-C. And one of the reasons for that is Zero's been the training ground for this, and the model for this different type of interaction. Before Zero, there was no such thing as a molecular tumour board. There was no forum where every week all the oncologists, paediatric oncologists in Australia got together. That did not exist, literally. It exists now. That doesn't mean everybody's put away their personal, clashes or their jealousies, but what it means is everyone's learnt this and grown together. So I think the model exists for this to work. No doubt we'll have to test some of these things as we go forward. We're going to learn more, but I think we've had this experience and it's been formative in my view. I think there's scientists here who know infinitely more about the disease that they are researching than they ever did 12 months ago, and there's certainly clinicians who know infinitely more about the genes that are driving the disease that they treat. And so I think that model is going to be incredibly important. It really makes this work.
And I agree with all of that, but not to dodge the question, because all of that's a little bit rainbows and fairy dust, and that's great. But I think the word I've used more than any other time tonight is the word change, right? And I mean, scientists love to continue to do things a different way. Clinicians love change.
So, you know, it's a significant challenge. And when we speak about what our challenge is moving forward, it's taking a culture and combining it and moving it forward. And so that's our responsibility. You know, we have to, you know, infuse the passion into everybody that works with us to realise this is what we're trying to do and why, and that it is a good thing, and it will take time and resources, and we'll get some of the things wrong, but we'll get a lot of things right, as evidenced by what my colleagues here are talking about. And so you've just got to kind of ride that and move forward. And I think that, you know, I still, you know, some might be put off by that, but I think it's really exciting. I think, you know, personally, my opportunity to be able to take people on this journey, because it will be a journey, but I think it's going to be a really good thing, and I think we'd be better for it on the other side.
Michelle, you wanted to quickly add something.
The only thing I would say is probably one of the most exciting 2 days of the year, and the one that all of our research and clinical leaders look forward to, is a 2-day off-site where we do have our clinical leaders and our research leaders in the room together with our external, highly distinguished National Scientific Advisory Panel, where we share our joint vision for individual projects, for Blue Sky. We talk through what we have achieved and what we could achieve together. And it's a hothouse, a vibrant 2 days of creating the future. Now, that we've been doing that for several years now, and the clinicians sort of vie for who can get off duty for that day, because we're usually in, you know, down the south coast or somewhere like that, so we get everyone out of their normal area. But taking that and demonstrating a much broader part of our cohorts, both at the clinical site and also the research area, and exposing them to that sort of environment, that program of change is what we need to be setting in place over the next 12 months now, so that everyone can see what it is that we're signing up for and become part of that.
I just wanted to throw a quick question to Richard. You've talked about change and the journey of the patient. What about the journey of the family? We've got a number of families here tonight who have been affected by childhood cancer in their family. How will the MQuad-C change things for families?
Well, there's ways that I hope it will change things. I mean, I must be hesitant to speak about this journey because it is, you know, I always, when I give speeches, talk about the privilege of working with our patients and our families. And I always describe them as superheroes because we witness feats of enormous strength in the face of the utmost adversity. That's true of multiple people in the room. I can see them from sitting here. So I'm hesitant to speak to that, but we hope that we make the journey easier. We know that it's the hardest thing in the world to have a child diagnosed with cancer. And as best as I can understand from observing it for so long, it's not just, well, it doesn't matter what the outcome is, the journey is barbaric. I'm quoting words from a previous family whose daughter is alive and well. So we have to make it better.
Yep.
And so how do we do that? Well, we do our best. We provide better facilities because ours are not up to scratch. You know, we have single rooms. We have those kinds of, from an inpatient point of view, we have a home. We have somewhere where patients feel that they're safe, where patients feel that they can get through the journey. And from an outpatient point of view, because as all these families will tell you, we have somewhere that's more efficient. And so if we can provide that, as well as providing new therapies, different therapies that make the journey better, if we can find ways to make the journey better and less hard, then hopefully we can help the next generation of the families coming through in a better way.
Liquid biopsy
Okay.
and just the...
I guess.
I think there was a question
sorry,
from the floor.
Simon, there was just
Sorry.
one comment.
Michelle wants me to just talk about one other thing briefly. An aspirational translational project which we are moving very quickly on. You know, those support CCI will hear a lot about liquid biopsy. And I think in the CCI sense, we talk a lot about identifying relapse and new therapies. That's 100% true.
But another vision that we've talked about a lot that I've got for liquid biopsy is about improving the journey. So very briefly, but liquid biopsy is about identifying single cancer cells in a body. Take the example of a child with a solid tumour. They get diagnosed with that solid tumour. Part of that diagnosis is I talked about the MRI before, took a scan, right? A scan that is necessary. For most small children, that requires an anaesthetic. Even if that treatment goes well and the tumour melts away, you have to do a scan at the end to make sure that it's gone. And then as we move forward, we have to scan that child regularly to make sure there's no new tumour there. Now, if we can get liquid biopsy right, instead of putting that child through an anaesthetic and a scan every 3 months, we can take a sample of blood and take it to the lab and say, don't worry, you're still cancer-free. Now that changes the journey, not only for patients here, but imagine that you're in Wagga. Imagine instead of the 4.5-hour drive, the overnight stay, the 4.5-hour anaesthetic, the next overnight stay because you're too tired to drive back, the 3-day trip, and then the 3-day wait to say, yeah, no, the scan's okay, don't worry, see you in 3 months. Or go to your paediatrician at Wagga Base Hospital, send me a blood sample, we'll tell you in 2 days. That's
incredible.
How we change the journey.
We have a question from the floor.
Simon, you mentioned the reference to the family in relation to the possible and potential circumstances that may happen and the impact that it might have on the family. And Richard, you said that 50% of the patients, approximately 50% of the patients, will be children that will come from the country, and they will be staying in areas like the Ronald McDonald House, where I was associated with for many years. Is there any thought being given to promote this magnificent new centre and its concept to the management of the Ronald McDonald houses across Australia, to give them some understanding of what country families can expect when they arrive? Because some families can stay up to 5, 7, 9 months in a house from the country, first time ever in the city, and I'm just wondering whether you would consider some appropriate approach to the management of the Ronald McDonald Houses Australia to give them some idea of what this magnificent centre is going to be all about.
Yeah, it's the problem we haven't solved. Everything you articulate there is an absolute serious, significant issue today. I have a transplant program that can't get the next kid in because the last kid can't leave. We've identified this problem on this campus for many years, and we continue to work with everybody, including Ronald McDonald House. Yes, absolutely. Trust me, the local one is very much aware, as is the one on the other side of town, and it is something to continue to work towards. But this is a very wicked, complex problem, right? And to be honest, I don't think it's just Ronald McDonald House that's going to be able to solve it. We need to have multiple solutions to this problem. And again, there's some people in the room that I've already been talking to about this, because it's actually multifaceted. You know, depending on the children that are coming, depending on the family that comes, depending on the facilities that you need. And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we were a bit cramped for space. You know, we lived in the most, this campus is one of the most densely populated places in the country. You know, as commented on by the minister when he came the other week, he was actually like, where's everybody in a park? But it's much more important than that. It is about how do we keep them close? How do we keep them housed? How do we keep them safe? And so I think that is one way, or that is one avenue that we definitely need to explore more about, and we have started those conversations. But there's many others that we're having too, because I've already recognised that we need a multi-pronged approach. Now, if anybody wants to go and buy a large patch of land not far from here and build a very large hotel, please come see me after. But I think the reality of the situation is we're going to need multiple solutions to this problem, and it is a problem. But there's another way out of this. Well, not another way out of it, but there's another part of this journey. It's get them home faster. right? Because that's what we still don't do well. The way we are doing that and what we are doing now, and I'm sorry I'm fidgeting, but everyone knows when I talk I have trouble sitting down. We are working with, I have, again, funded by philanthropy, I have rural and regional nurses that are working and building up our capacity at the rural and regional sites. We have a whole vision as a clinical partner of the Quad C to have a base hospital in each LHD in New South Wales. So for example, again, I've used Wagga, so Wagga Base Hospital. So everybody that is in the catchment of Wagga Base Hospital, and what can we do at Wagga? As much as we can. So you come for your really specialised therapy, you come for your translational research, and then once you post, when you need your care afterwards, you can be at home. And I'll send a clinician out there, because we already do that, and you'll have a nurse trained to look after you, and we'll have supports in place with that general paediatrician, because we'll give them the education to help look after you. So rather than stay 9 months here, yeah, you got to be here for 3 months and we need to work through that, but the rest of the time, get home. Get home with the rest of the family. Let that family go to work. Let those kids go to school. Get back into your community where your support is. This comes back to challenging the paradigm. We can't have an ivory tower where everybody comes here. That ain't going to work, and it's not the right model for families. We have to get them back to their support in their communities. So we have to have a multi-pronged approach.
I'm very sorry, folks, but we're going to have to draw this to a close. We could be here all night, I'm sure. I've got a list of questions I wanted to ask. I'm sure all of you have been thinking of them yourselves. So I'll have to call it over at this point and thank our panellists for speaking to us and taking us on the journey of the difference that the MQuad-C is going to make, and how clinicians and our researchers are going to work for a better outcome for patients. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Paul. Incredible insights, and it is definitely an exciting time for the Institute, Kids Cancer Centre, and the future for kids with cancer in this country. I'd now like to introduce a couple of very special guests, Kristen and Paul Kennelly, who are the parents of Jack, a brave, bubbly and funny 5-year-old. At just 3 years of age, he was diagnosed with a rare cancer in his brain. And stories like Jack are why we're here. And I'd like to welcome Kristen and Paul to share their journey with childhood cancer.
Good evening. I'm Kristen and this is Paul, and we are simply Jack's parents. We've got a snapshot of, I guess, our journey cancer that we're going to share with you now. Paul and I are standing in the busy Canberra Hospital emergency room. Our only privacy is a curtain. We stood listening to the news that our 3-year-old son, Jack, has a tumour in his brain. My mind and body went numb. It was our second and lengthy trip to the emergency department. Jack had been experiencing fatigue, irritability and headaches. These symptoms had been getting worse over the course of a few weeks, and Jack just did not seem to be himself. We were already exhausted, and this was only the start of our journey. Jack and I arrived in Sydney about 16 hours after receiving the news. Paul made the 3-hour drive on his own. It was around 3 o'clock. The emergency department at the Children's Hospital Randwick was full of people. Jack was placed in a bed, and over the next 6 hours, we were faced with doctors, surgeons and nurses, all wanting information and unable to provide any answers. It was overwhelming, exhausting and frightening, and yet here was Jack, cool as a cucumber, enjoying icy poles and apple juice. By this stage, he'd been fasting for around 36 hours, had been absorbed into this hospital world full of people looking and touching with strange devices, and he just accepted it. He seemed to immediately become at peace with this world, and I think he knew. He knew this was where he needed to be. I have been in awe of Jack from that moment. Jack had an operation first thing the following morning. Pressure had built up in the head as the tumour had blocked the flow of the cerebral fluid. A biopsy was required to determine what the lesion was. Jack recovered well and was his smiling, talkative self as soon as he woke. The one thing about Jack is he is tough as nails and always has been. Nothing gets in his way and stops him from enjoying his life. It was on my 39th birthday, 2 weeks after our journey began, we formally received news that Jack's tumour was cancerous. Our bright, full of life eldest son had brain cancer. As I sat in that little room, watching Jack happily watching a show, oblivious to the news, my heart just broke. I tried to pull myself together. I desperately tried to understand. I tried to get a grip on what was happening. But upon reflection, all the information we received went in one ear and out the other. The only word that stayed with me was cancer. My son had brain cancer, and our family had to somehow get through it. There was no concrete diagnosis of the tumour type, so the worst case scenario plan for Jack was discussed. It included major brain surgery to remove as much of the tumour that could be safely done, 2 rounds of chemotherapy, another major brain surgery, 4 to 6 weeks of daily radiotherapy sessions, and an additional 4 to 6 rounds of chemotherapy. Jack underwent his first surgery on the 5th of January 2023. It was an agonising 8-hour wait, staring down that long hospital hallway, waiting to see our son again. I couldn't bring myself to leave. I just waited. Finally, he was out and heading to intensive care, but the news was not positive. The tumour had doubled in size and was very difficult to remove. What followed was a rough night of pain and suffering as Jack was kept asleep until his MRI the following day. Remarkably, he woke in good spirits, and as soon as the breathing tube was removed, he smiled at the doctor and said thank you.
When we first found out Jack had cancer, he was enrolled into the Zero Childhood Cancer program. The Zero team were able to analyse his tumour, and 1 month after arriving in Sydney, we had Jack's official diagnosis. He was diagnosed with a primary rhabdomyosarcoma. The tumour was located in the pineal area of the brain. It was very rare to be found in this location, and we would be spending the next 6 to 12 months undergoing further surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy in Sydney. This specific treatment plan was based on scientific literature around Jack's tumour type and the genetic mutation identified by the researchers in the Zero program. With Jack recovering well from surgery, he would endure 6 days of daily chemotherapy and then 10 days off. These days were spent at the park and eating ice cream. Jack made a few friends along the way. One taught Jack about jokes, and so we spent the next few months listening to Jack's jokes.
The second major surgery was tough. It was the first time we could see a physical difference in Jack. He did not bounce back as he previously did, and he experienced some significant neurological side effects, including loss of balance, a tremor in his right side, but this did not stop his determination. And when the doctor would not remove his feeding tube after waking him, he promptly pulled it out himself and demanded 3 ice creams. Our next challenge was radiotherapy, and again Jack showed us his amazing strength and resilience. This incredible 4-year-old boy lay alone and awake in a room with a tight-fitting mask, holding him against the bed while the machine worked its magic beam for around 20 minutes. Jack did this 5 days a week for 6 weeks. He didn't always want to do it, but he didn't miss one. He always got through it like the true warrior he is. Jack completed 4 more rounds of chemotherapy. Each round became harder and his body began to deteriorate. We were happy to reach the end, as we were not sure how much more his body could take. While Jack was generally in good spirits throughout his treatment, he did not have everything go his way. He had 9 emergency shunt replacements, including during his first chemotherapy treatment on his 4th birthday, on his brother's 2nd birthday, and on his first day of radiation. He was on steroids for most of the time, making me irritable, hungry and demanding. Despite all of this, Jack always made us laugh and made the best of the situation. He enjoyed photography, playing Monopoly, riding his bike to the park, eating pizza and ice cream, the fairy garden at the hospital, playing with balls and remote control cars in the hospital hallway, having running races and being with his family. He's an inspiration and we could not be more proud. Today, Jack is a healthy boy, enjoying his first year of school and making friends. He's not negative about his time in hospital and will often remember the fun times he had. We could not be more grateful for research like Zero Childhood Cancer, because we truly believed it saved Jack's life. Zero made it possible for Jack's tumour to be analysed, a definitive diagnosis, and more importantly, gave us why and how it occurred. We view ourselves as lucky. So much progress has been made, and it's thanks to people like you who are here tonight. But we do wonder what our journey may have looked like if Jack received his diagnosis faster. Time and resources are so important in the lives of children diagnosed with cancer, and I know we can do better. To see and hear tonight about the new Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre gives families like ours hope. We need more research, more collaboration and greater care. This wonderful facility will help us get there because kids like Jack depend on it. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you, Kristen and Paul, for sharing your journey with childhood cancer, and what an awful journey it is. Jack is certainly a brave and determined young boy, and it's wonderful to hear that he's enjoying his first year at school. And on behalf of everyone here, I hope he's certainly getting plenty of days in the park and some ice cream. You heard during that story the power of research for children like Jack. It's stories like these that make a difference and motivate us. alongside the determination and passion of parents like Kristen and Paul that motivate every one of us here and at the Institute every day to change the outcomes for all children with cancer. I hope you feel inspired by what you've heard tonight. Your support cannot be understated. None of this can happen without all of you. It's truly this combination of love and science that makes progress like this happen. Thank you to each of our presenters tonight, Michelle Haber, Richard Mitchell and Paul Eckert, for your important insights, Paulette and Loretta for that unique journey through the power of research-driven clinical care, and Kristen and Paul again for your inspirational story that you've shared with us. In conclusion, I'd like to thank every one of you for coming along tonight. It's truly exciting to see what the future holds for us with this total integration of research and clinical care at the Minderoo Children's Comprehensive Cancer Centre. But this has only been made possible with the philanthropic and community support that you all provide. So thank you for enabling us to achieve such progress. I hope you walk away from tonight feeling more informed, more connected and inspired. It's only with your continued support and advocacy that we'll be able to continue this momentum so that together we can achieve our vision of one day curing all children with cancer. As we say at the Institute, it's not if, it's when. Thank you, everyone.